morning, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CTRL+J Asia Pacific here in Jakarta. CTRL+J is a series of convening that brings together thought leaders in the fields of media, technology, research, and regulation to find ways of working and best practices in preserving quality and accurate information in the Global South. The conference kickstarted in the first regional convening in São Paulo, Brazil, back in March, and will head to Johannesburg, South Africa, next in September, before culminating in an international edition in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, in November. The regional convenings in Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Africa are meant to encourage build partnerships at a regional level. So we hope this Asia Pacific edition of CTRL+J will drive meaningful conversations that translate into tangible outcomes within the region. Hello once again, and I am Trina Leong from the International Fund for Public Interest Media, IFPIM, sponsor of the CTRL+J APAC.
And I am Margaret Aritonang from the Alliance of Independent Journalists Indonesia, or IG Indonesia, a co-host of this event. Both of us are honored to be your MCs for the next 3 days, diving into conversations around tech regulations to explore emerging local technologies and discuss best ways of working as a united bloc, supporting South-to-South initiatives. Our goal is to ensure these conversations provide ideas and clarity on next steps and priorities, ensuring the media industry is able to proactively and preemptively prepare itself for changes to come. That said, we hope the conversation we have this week empower you to take action, and look forward to seeing a spring of ideas and partnerships. But we shall not bore you further and take this opportunity to thank you all for taking the time to be present this week. We have 160 guests from 16 countries from multiple backgrounds and skill sets.
Margaret, I just realized we are such a diverse group in the room. And since we have everyone locked in here right now, it'll be good to kickstart by getting a sense of what your expectations are from CTRL+J. We have a short questionnaire on Mentimeter. You can scan the QR code and answer it swiftly. This survey will be open until the evening. If you wish to post about this event on your socials, you can use the following hashtags: #CTRL+J, #CTRL+J APAC, #AI for journalism. Now, let's begin, shall we?
Now, a conference in Indonesia would not be complete without a recitation of a pantun. It's a traditional Indonesian poem. So here's one from us. Pergi ke Jakarta beli celana. Kurang keras ya, cakepnya, ulang ya. Pergi ke Jakarta beli celana. Pulangnya mampir beli kuaci. Mari bersama di arena CTRL+J APAC akan kita mulai. Now, I would like to invite the representatives from the organizing committee to share their opening remarks. Please welcome Mr. Arka Diratara, Board of the Indonesian Cyber Media Association or AMSI, followed by Nani Afrida, President of IG Indonesia, and lastly, Ms. Ivy Ong, Director for Asia and the Pacific at IFPIM.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's a pleasure to welcome you all. Selamat datang for who come to Indonesia first time. Welcome. So I'd like to start honoring Deputy Minister of Communication and Digital Affairs of Republic Indonesia, Mr. Nezar Patria. Thank you for your continued support, Pak. Chairperson of the Indonesian Cyber Media Association or AMSI, Mr. Wahyu Dhyatmika or Blikomang. Terima kasih. Chairperson of the Alliance of Independent Journalism, or IG, Ms. Nani Afrida, who is also in the stage right now. Director of AI, Emerging Tech and Regulation at the International Fund for Public Interest Media, or IFPIM, Ms. Irene J. Liu. And also fellow panelists for media organization across the Asia Pacific region, welcome. And also all esteemed guests present here today. So Control-J APAC is a regional and international forum organized by Indonesia Cyber Media Association, or AMSI, and the Alliance of Independent Journalism, or IG, and the International Fund of Public Interest, or IFPIM. So over the next 3 days, this conference will bring us together closer to explore challenges and opportunities. So that's the two main keywords. So we need to strengthen the media ecosystem in general in the age of artificial intelligence. We are also working toward for fair and transparent partnership between media and technology platforms. So I speak on behalf of AMSI, a nonprofit organization founded back in 2017, which now represents more than 500 media outlets across Indonesia and collectively generating more than 1 billion page views monthly in Indonesia. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are very proud to become part of this event and this gathering as a platform for collaboration and exchange of ideas among digital media professionals from the Asia Pacific region. So, your presence not only strengthened this discussion in the spirit of cross-border collaboration, it also reaffirmed the essential role digital media plays in shaping the future of our region. So basically, in bottom line, what I'm trying to convey the information is about the urgency and the share of aspiration. So the first one is the urgency, because the AI is transforming our world rapidly and oftenly unevenly. So, but also aspiration, because that this information can be shaped by our collective values, grounded in shared principles, and driven by spirit of cross-border collaboration that puts people and purpose at its core. I think that's the most important. So, ladies and gentlemen, Control-J APAC serves as the critical milestone. Thank you for your participation and your contribution to this panel, and let us turn this moment into the beginning of our next bold step ahead. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, actually. Good morning, friends and fellow journalists. The person that already mentioned before by my colleague next to me. Good morning, and I believe that many of you already fly like more than 12 hours to reach Indonesia, and I'm very appreciate with that effort. I'm Nani Afrida. I represent Alliance of Independent Journalists. We have around 1,800 journalists around Indonesia with 41 chapters throughout Indonesia. And we also have a stance about the EI and this Control-J. We gather at the critical time, a time when journalism is facing both great opportunities and serious challenges. From artificial intelligence that we say AI. At AJI, we believe that AI is not something to fear, but something we must understand, shape, and use wisely. The media needs innovative ways to embrace AI while staying true to its mission, journalism mission, to serve public with accurate, independent, and trustworthy information. AI should help us enrich the facts, not distort the facts. In Indonesia, we are taking this conversation seriously. AJI has published a position paper on the ethics of AI in journalism. We hope this can be one of many contributions to the global effort to ensure that technology respects the value of good journalism. We also believe that access to AI tool must be equal. Whether you are in the so-called global north or global south, I hate this term actually. In this big city or the remote city, this means fair infrastructure, fair training, and shared responsibility to uphold the journalism integrity in every corner of our region. We welcome the Indonesian government, thank you, Mr. Deputy Minister, for a plan to regulate AI. But we must say clearly, journalists and public must be part of this conversation. Technology moves fast, And we can only keep it up if we collaborate across countries, professionals, and sector. Together, let's build a shared path for equality journalism in the AI era. Let's raise a united voice to hold powerful platforms accountable. And let's help shape AI tools and understand context, promote inclusion, and serve the public good. By working together, we can strengthen our regional voices and negotiation power when engaged with the dominant platform. Thank you.
Salamat pagi, magandang umaga. Good morning, everyone. We at the International Fund for Public Interest Media warmly welcome all of you to Control J Asia Pacific. We are very fortunate to be collaborating with and co-host this dialogue with the Associação Media Cyber Indonesia and AMSI Journalists Independent. For those of you who are only learning about us, the International Fund for Public Interest Media is the only multilateral fund in the world designed to support journalism. As an international organization based in Paris, our mission is to foster a paradigm shift in how public interest media is resourced, with the goal of ensuring it is independent, inclusive, and resilient. We have a multilateral coalition of governments such as France, Sweden, Ghana, Timor-Leste, Australia, to name a few, as well as foundations like Ford Foundation and Luminate. We work directly with a range of newsrooms in the Global South that are navigating the new challenges and opportunities presented by Gen AI. Emerging technologies are transforming how information is produced, shared, and distributed. With many big tech companies investing in AI technology that relies on large volumes of content, demands for fair compensation have increased. Publishers are grappling with challenges to adapt and advocate for their interests as new tech such as AI-powered search engines and chatbots develop at speed. To meet the moment, the Fund Strategy for Emerging Technologies and Regulation, or STAR, has been supporting and promoting fair value exchange between technology companies and journalism organizations from which they draw content from. If you'd like to hear more about STAR, go and find Irene J. Liu over there and Jessica White over there. The situation I described won't be new to most of you in this room. You are experts in your respective fields, movers, innovators, the right folks to look to amidst this uncertainty. I am reminded of a legendary intellectual, a well-known Indonesian author, Pramodya Anantatower. Of the plethora of quotes in Pram's work, I must underscore two thoughts. First, that each injustice must be fought against, especially in one's own heart. Second, humankind is able to create new conditions, a new reality. We are not fated to swim forever among the realities that are here now. And the next few days here will be groundbreaking. I encourage you to fully immerse yourself in these sessions. Sit beside someone you don't know and get to know them. Share your experiences, your insights, even the questions that are keeping you up at night. Find your future co-conspirators and collaborators and create new realities with them. Set up Signal group chats before you leave. And maybe schedule some time to shop for Indonesian coffee and batik and continue those conversations. Let's co-create a collective response and ensure that independent, trustworthy news survives and thrives in the age of AI. It's time to go somewhere we've never gone before. Maraming salamat, terima kasih.
Without further ado, let's start Control J APAC 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the three representatives of the organizing committee for officially inaugurating the second Control GPAC conference. As we delve into today's exciting agenda, I'm thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker, the esteemed Deputy Minister of Digital and Communications of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Nezar Patria. We are incredibly fortunate to have him with us, ready to share his infallible insights on the dynamic development of AI and its transformative role in shaping the future of work. Pak Nezar, the stage is now yours.
Thank you. Very good morning to all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, fellow civil society actors, and all the dedicated publishers and journalists gathered here today. It is a profound honor to welcome you all to Jakarta for Control J Asia Pacific, a pivotal gathering in our ongoing global conversation about the future of quality journalism in the age of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. On behalf of the Republic of Indonesia, I extend our warmest greeting and express our excitement to host this crucial regional dialogue. We stand at a fascinating yet challenging crossroads. The rapid evolution of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies presents us with unprecedented opportunities. AI can enhance efficiency, expand reach, and even unlock new forms of storytelling, allowing us to deliver information with greater speed and personalization. Yet with these opportunities come significant responsibilities and complex challenges. We grapple with the proliferation of misinformation, the ethical dilemmas of AI-generated content, the economic pressures of news organizations, and the fundamental question of how to ensure fair compensation for journalistic work in a digitally transformed landscape. In this dynamic environment, the role of quality journalism has never been more vital. It is the understructure of informed public discourse, the guardian of accountability and the voice of diverse communities. Without robust, independent journalism, our societies risk losing their compass in an increasingly complex world. This shift is particularly pronounced in our region. In Asia Pacific, digital pure players are reported to command a staggering $220 billion in advertising revenues in 2024, far surpassing traditional media owners. By 2028, digital revenues are forecast to account for an overwhelming 81% of total advertising budget in Asia Pacific. This dominance is largely driven by mobile devices, which are often the sole means of internet access for many consumers, accounting for 76% of total digital advertising revenues in the region. Streaming is also rapidly eclipsing traditional television, expected to surpass it in revenue share by 2027. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia, as a nation with a booming technology industry and a vibrant media landscape, provides a timely and relevant backdrop for this regional dialogue. We are deeply invested in fostering an ecosystem where innovation thrives hand in hand with responsibility. Our government has been actively engaged in regulatory efforts aimed at supporting publisher rights on digital platforms, recognizing this indispensable value that original journalistic content brings to digital sphere. These efforts are not merely about economic sustainability. They are about safeguarding the integrity of information and ensuring a fair playing field for those who invest in producing it. Here in Indonesia, the shift in consumption habits is particularly stark. Social media has become the primary gateway to news for a significant portion of our population, with 57% of Indonesians using it as a general source of news and 40% relying on it as their main source. The figure rise to half of all 18 to 24 years old who primarily access news through social media platforms. This rapid move away from traditional television, print, and even conventional online news sources presents immense challenges for our media industry, which continues to face declining revenues. The economic value of news has unfortunately shifted with a massive reallocation of revenue from content creators to platform owners. This has led to more than 60% of Indonesian reporting a lack of trust or ambivalence toward the news, and a concerning 75% admitting to sometimes or often avoiding mainstream news altogether, according to Reuters Institute 2025. We believe that our experiences, challenges, and solutions here in Indonesia can offer valuable insights, just as we are eager to learn from the diverse perspectives and innovative approaches from across the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. This conference, CTRL+J Asia-Pacific, builds on the foundational discussion held in Johannesburg in 2023 and São Paulo early this year. It signifies our collective commitment to share learning, innovation, and the development of collective agendas. The challenges we face are too vast and to integrate for any single entity, be it a government, a tech giant, a media house, or a civil society organization to tackle alone. This is why your presence here, representing a diverse spectrum of stakeholders, is so critical. Over the next 3 days, we will delve into a critical question: how can we envision the future of media in the AI era? What are the specific trends and adaptation required within the Asia-Pacific region? How do we ensure fair compensation strategies? And crucially, how do we amplify diverse voices, address language barriers, and prevent bias in AI models, especially for low resources language that are so vital to our cultural and linguistic heritage? Our shared goal must be to build an information ecosystem where technology serves as an enabler for quality journalism, not a disruptor of its core values. We must strive for fairer partnership between media and global technology players, ensuring that the creators of valuable content are adequately recognized and compensated. We must champion ethical AI development that respect human values, promote accuracy, and combat the spread of harmful narratives. Let us use this discussion to forge actionable pathways. Let us explore innovative business models, robust policy frameworks, and collaborative initiatives that will strengthen journalism for generations to come. These insights shared here, the connections made, and the ideas sparked will be instrumental in shaping a future where quality information prevails and where journalism continues to fulfill its essential democratic function. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident that the RICS program ahead, featuring leading minds from across the globe, will provide invaluable perspective and inspire concrete solutions. Let us engage openly, learn from one another, and work together to ensure that journalism not only survive, but thrive in this new era. Thank you, and I wish you all a highly productive and inspiring Control J Asia Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Nezar, for the enlightening. Could you kindly remain on stage as we will be taking photos? May I invite representatives from the Indonesian Press Council to the stage and Publisher Rights Committee, representatives of AJI Indonesia, AMSI, IFPIM. Do we have representatives from the Coordinating Politics, Law and Human Rights Ministry here? And representative from PR2 Media. Thank you, everyone. Please. Silakan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Next, we will move into a dynamic dialogue with our panel, our first panel of the day, where we will explore the challenges and opportunities posed by the development of tech to journalism and what has changed since our first Control J convening in Latin America in March 2025. Our distinguished panelists for this session are Michael Markovitz, Maia and Wahyu Dhyatmika. And Ms. Irene J. Liu from IFPIM will moderate the discussion. Without further ado, let's kick in. I'll hand over to Irene. Please, Irene.
Selamat pagi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's very grand music. I am very honored to be able to be moderating this panel. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Irene Liu, and I am the Director for AI, Emerging Tech, and Regulation at the International Fund for Public Interest Media. I think that's the longest title of anyone in this entire conference. But I'm so thrilled to be able to moderate this panel with this wonderful group of people. First, I would like to introduce, and so what we're gonna do today is we'll start off with some presentations and then move into a few questions that I have, and then of course we want to offer the opportunity for anyone in the audience to also ask questions. So without further ado, may I please invite Michael Markovitz from the GIBS Center, or the GIBS University Business School of Business, Media Leadership Think Tank, to give his first presentation. Yes, is there a clicker for the presentation to advance the slides? Everyone there, I'm seeing thumbs up in the back, but is he going to be able to do it, or is he just going to tell people? Oh, someone's going to do it for you. Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and Honorable Deputy Minister. As we say in South Africa, all protocols observed. ANSI, everyone who's invited us, my friend Wahyu, who I met 2 years ago in South Africa. It's just fantastic to be in Indonesia for the first time. I'm really excited to be here. And I think that it's just incredible to see this south-to-south collaboration developing and growing strength and strength by the month, by the year, and at a time when it is most needed. So I'm going to just try and reflect very quickly on what has happened since 2023. So if we could have the next slide, please, that would be great. Yes, so, you know, there's a saying by Lenin, not John Lennon, Vladimir Lenin, which said there are decades where nothing happens and there are months where decades happen. And I think Irene was saying there's actually weeks when decades happen, and we can talk about that geopolitically. But really, I wanted to just talk about the fact that so much has changed in the last 2 years since we organized our conference in Johannesburg. And I think we can move on because we basically have seen incredible amount of disruption and the undermining of the sustainability of public interest media. And basically, I think that, you know, we were faced with, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope I'm going to be able to work this. Yeah, great. So basically, in 2023, we were looking at what we felt was an extinction crisis for media, and that was following COVID. And faced with an extinction crisis, what did we do? We organized a conference, and we felt that we needed to invite key people from key countries in the Global South, particularly, but also to learn from what was going on in the Global North. But that's where we started building this relationship, because when I looked at the groups from all the different countries, and we had 24 different countries there, it was the Indonesians and the Brazilians who, in their own countries, were starting to push back and to say, no. This is not working for our media. We need to intervene, and we need to do something. So we organized a conference called Big Tech and Journalism, and that's where I first met Wahyu, and it was fantastic that we were able to come together and start building this community. We didn't know that we would be here 2 years stronger and more connected. But at that conference, that's really where we started thinking about what do we want. And it was very difficult to say, with all the differences in different countries, about coming up with one system or one mechanism that was going to apply to everyone. So we came up with principles for fair compensation. Very simple, 10 principles. I'm not going to go through them. They're on the screen. But it was really just to give guidance about that if you were going to bring in laws that were going to deal with this compensation problem, we felt that those laws should have certain principles. And I'm quite pleased to say that some of those principles have been followed quite strictly, and they've served as a guide, and we were incredibly proud that they were endorsed by over 101 individuals and organizations from about 28 different countries. But so much has changed since then. I think I've just killed my presentation. You know, that's what you call self-sabotage. Thank you. So, you know, in terms of some of the lessons from the past, we all know the most recent lessons from the past have been disruption and market failure of the ad-supported business model. There's been the collapse of the trust in news, and there's this historical failure to perhaps invest enough in innovation in newsrooms. But these failures cannot be laid solely at the door of the media. We have to take into account the anti-competitive conduct and unlawful conduct, in some instances, by digital platforms, and the fact that journalism is not funded like a public good. And once again, I've killed my presentation. I will get this right eventually. So basically, what do we mean by public good? People know about public good in relation to education, health, water, housing. Well, not always housing, depends where you're from. But my one slide is jumping, so I hope you don't get dizzy from watching this. Okay. I just wanted to quote a colleague of mine, Steely, who I work with. What is public good? It's when a product has value to society, but the economic conditions for sustaining that product are not there. And that's really what's happened to public interest journalism. No one can deny, although there are people that do, the role that public interest journalism plays in society, from investigative journalism to serving as a block against the massive disinformation out there. But the fact that it's got value doesn't necessarily mean that there's a business model that works for it. And that's why there's a big move to try and get it declared a public good. What are some of the lessons from the past? Well, we've basically seen that journalism as a public good is not really sustainable without some kind of intervention. That's why IFPIM's role is good. Obviously, IFPIM cannot fund all media all around the world, but it has been playing a role funding an ecosystem of supportive mechanisms to ensure that we can build on it. Basically, we cannot solve the problem of market failure by innovation alone. The critique that you can just innovate your way out of a market failure is really far-fetched. Yes, a lot can be done through innovation, but not on its own. And then the third thing that I think is very important is platform immunity. If you look what happened in the US, they have a clause called Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act, and that clause, which was at the beginning of the internet, basically gave immunity to all these platforms from any form of liability for the content on their platforms. The liability was for the traditional media. Traditional media has to do the fact-checking and all of those important things, but platforms have complete immunity, and the problem is that has been exported around the world, where there's just this general immunity. And so what are we looking at? We're looking at, I've already identified three solutions for the media. One is to tackle the root causes of anti-competitive conduct. And that's why we look at beyond compensation. And I don't know if my colleague from the Competition Commission is here, Paula Frey. We're going to be talking about their report a bit, but one of the good things about the Competition Commission's report, there was a market inquiry in South Africa. It's still underway, and we've got to the stage of a provisional report, and I really urge you, to those who are not familiar, to have a look at it, because we're quite proud of what they've done so far, and we've played quite a big role in helping shape it. But the main thing is that compensation on its own is not a long-term remedy. It's an immediate-term remedy, but you need to tackle the root causes of that anti-competitive conduct, and the Competition Commission, in its provisional report, has tried to do that. Again, the Commission has come up with a view that these algorithmic design features in the platforms are not some things that just happen by mistake. They're choices made by the platform. And the Commission made that conclusion, well, if it's choices, they can make different choices. Now, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Commission to impose those technology changes, but I think it was important that they made that point. And so therefore, we need to shift the debate to the structural reform issue and basically, look at the difficulties faced by the media in the current situation. We need to start funding independent media and also infrastructure. I think one of the big problems is that you're totally dependent on the infrastructure that we have today, and we need to look at different kinds of distribution. Also, restoring visibility. One of the big problems with these algorithms is you can have the most fantastic content in Indonesia, but if it's not the type of content that generates the engagement that the platform wants, you're going to become invisible or close to invisible. And we want to change that. And that won't happen without regulation. Okay? A very important point, and I know that Wahyu makes this point, and we all make this point, Brazil, South Africa, Indonesia, collectivity, working together, aligning forces and strengthening the South-to-South collaboration. Between South Africa, Indonesia, and Brazil, we bring together the three key continents in the Global South. And we're quite excited. We know our regions are very different to the three countries. The rest of Africa obviously has some big media markets like Kenya and Nigeria, but everyone has differences. But people want to see who's leading the way, who's taking it on, and I believe our three countries are playing a role in that. And I think it's very important with this Control-J tricontinental alliance is that we build on it. Now, the solutions, and I think it's very important, solutions for the future of journalism must be built within a human rights framework. You know, when people see you must have regulation, they interpret regulation as control. No, we are saying that regulation has to be based on the fact that freedom of expression is protected at the same time. And we need to guard against digital authoritarian. Now, to be fair, I know this is about journalism, so I have to give Google's objections to the report, which were many. And you know, just to go through them. They make the claim they make very little money from the news, very little money. They say that, you know, they're doing a big favor for publications. They're sending referral traffic. They believe that publishers have full control over their content. They deny that the ad tech market is monopolistic, although a US judge has disagreed and found that Google has an illegal monopoly on ad tech. And then they did an experiment in Europe, where they withdrew news from withdrew news from Google, a bunch of outlets, and then came to the conclusion there was absolutely no difference in traffic, and therefore you guys are, you know, think that news is worth much more to Google than it actually is. And I think, well, you know, I think that we need to come back and say, you know, we had an alliance of the South African National Editors Forum, a big collective civil society alliance, and we said, you know, Google's architecture shapes the ecosystem through this kind of untransparent ranking. Traffic to publishers doesn't equal fairness. We believe that there's structural power that doesn't give people a lot of choice, and we go into a lot more detail, but in the interest of time, I won't. We criticize Google's experiment as being flawed. We looked at the fact that framing news as a transactional commodity is not the right thing, and we wanted to frame this problem. It's not purely a competition problem. In South Africa, we're seeing it as a constitutional human rights problem, and Google disagrees with that. And then we think that these token remedies are insufficient. A media fund will be great, but it needs to be enforced by law. Voluntary mechanisms are short-term fixes. Now, just to come to the end, there are a lot of issues to be resolved. We feel we're only at half time in our process. A lot can change. We also believe that we need to solve the sovereignty issue. You know, the fact that you have got the strongest companies in human history that are bigger and stronger than many governments. So I think it's taken a few brave governments and regulators in the Global South to try and take them on, Indonesia, Brazil, and South Africa included. And we need to see, well, you know, what are the potential threats? You know, there's been threats of blocking news in various countries like Canada and Australia. And obviously us in the Global South, we think, well, if they're prepared to do it in those countries, they're probably going to do it elsewhere. But that should not stop us from coming up with what we believe are the correct solutions. Lastly, We also know that regulation, policy change, and litigation are not quick fixes. They're a very long road, and people can get tired and despondent. So I think when you go into these processes from an advocacy point of view, you have to be prepared that it could take 5 years, it could take even longer, but you've got to keep on it. At the same time, you need to make interventions for now, and that's why we at GIBS, we've launched an executive program in media leadership, which I'm actually launching tonight at 7 o'clock Indonesian time, where we're trying to do our own intervention in helping leaders, young leaders, navigate this very, very difficult, disruptive period. So thank you very much. Sorry I took a bit longer, but I really appreciate this opportunity and look forward to engaging with all of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. I think it's really interesting to hear that the themes from your conference in 2023 still resonate, and yet there have been so many changes. And so if we can zoom 2 years ahead, or 3 months back, I guess we could say, I'd like to invite Maia Fortes, who is with AJOR, the Association of Digital Journalism and Media in Brazil. On your agendas, you have a different speaker. Maia has very kindly stepped in due to the fact that Paula was ill and could not travel. AJOR was one of the co-hosts of Control-J in LATAM, and we are thrilled to have Maia present about the outcomes of the Control-J LATAM conference and also to provide insights from Brazil. Thanks, Maia.
Thank you, Irene. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be invited and to be part of this discussion. We are very excited to learn more from you, share a bit of our experience, but mainly learn, because what we have learned over the last 2 years is that we have a lot of similarities and can definitely get to know more about the experiences South Africa and Indonesia and other countries from the Global South have. So, as Irene said, my name is Maia. I'm Executive Director of AJOR, which is a very recent organization founded in Brazil, and that is very similar to AMSI here. We are half of the age of the association from Indonesia. We are 4 years old, and hopefully we'll get to our 500 members in 4 years, so that will be more similar. I wanted to introduce the association before we get in the debate, because I feel it's important to share that I think we are going to through very similar processes in these different countries, which is an explosion of new digital media organizations that have that are very much focused in experimentation and in using the internet as an opportunity to develop the content they are creating. Most of them are created by journalists, are founded by journalists who are very much convinced on the type of content they would like to share. They believe in public interest information being shared with the population. So AJOR was founded in 2021 by 30 organizations in Brazil, and we've recently reached the mark of 150 organizations. We represent these initiatives, and we have 3 main points of action. One of them is focused specifically on what Michael was saying, that is on training this leadership to be the new leadership of journalism in Brazil. So we have training programs focused in developing these organizations, focused in capacity building, but we also have developed our advocacy area over the last period, learning from the other countries' experiences and understanding that not only do we need compensation by platforms, but mainly we need to share the culture, the conception that journalism is a public good and should be supported by public policies, so that we can not only combat disinformation or guarantee media literacy, but mainly guarantee access to quality information and rights to the population. So we have been in a country where we have a history in our constitution, for example, the idea that communication is a right. We still don't see journalism as a public good, so this has been a process in which we are trying to get closer, get closer to the audiences and convince also journalists that this is important, but mainly think of how we can support this new ecosystem that is producing content that is closer to the population. So I don't want to talk so much about that, but if you guys want to know more about AJOR, we have our website, and I will be here during the 3 days. I would love to share and learn more with you also about this. So as Michael was saying, we also met 2 years ago in South Africa, and this was a very important moment for AJOR. We had been founded for less than 2 years at that moment, and we were developing our advocacy strategy, but we already had pillars that connected directly to the principles that were being developed there. So this was a moment in which we were able to bring legitimacy to these discussions, and also bring back these debates to Brazil, and use these documents and this the knowledge gathered to convince leadership and important stakeholders. And in the end, this was also something that was able to help us in multi-stakeholder initiatives such as the G20, because in 2024, Brazil was in the presidency of the G20, and we were able to present these principles as elements that were very important to guarantee information integrity as a pillar for the G20, and hopefully we are going through this process also now in South Africa due to this experience. So I listed 3 of these principles which were very important because they connect a lot to our reality. AJOR represents organizations that are from the largest digital native organization to the smallest one, from community organizations that started in print or that know that their audience are not yet completely in the digital world and still produce in print. So we have a very diverse public that we represent, and we think it's something that's extremely important to guarantee access to different profiles of the population. So we have been trying to develop different strategies to support them. The other one is diversity. If you look at the data from the leadership reports, the global leadership reports that are focused in traditional media in Brazil, you will see that mainly editors and leadership are still white men, but the profile of our members is definitely not that. We have mainly women in leadership, a lot of black members that are in leadership and are founding their new organizations, indigenous organizations, and we want to strengthen these initiatives as part of the ecosystem too. And the other one, as I said, is the importance to convince the public debate and stakeholders for the need for public policy in Brazil. We're a country that, although we have continental size, we have never had federal public policy focused in fomenting journalism, and not only specifically on generating revenue, but guaranteeing, for example, infrastructure. And we know that there are other countries in the Global South, and specifically here in APAC, that have already discussed, have already developed initiatives focused in public infrastructure for technology and in other fronts. We feel like these types of spaces, CTRL+J, and also the event in the Big Tech and Journalism event in South Africa in 2023, have been extremely important to guarantee and strengthen the debate we are having in Brazil. And when we not only do we share the knowledge with other countries and help them develop their local agendas, we also bring the knowledge from these other countries and debate with our local representatives and are able to strengthen this debate and share this also with other stakeholders from other fields, which is something that we have been doing a lot in Brazil. And I know that from talking to people from here from Indonesia happens too. We have been developing collaboration with digital rights groups, and more recently with the AI bill in Brazil, with the culture sector. So these collaboration and perspectives has helped us also in this front. So going to Control J, the idea was to build on what we had learned in big tech and journalism. We had this extremely important event between 2023 and 2025, which was AI, that I think got everyone by surprise with the accelerating of this process very rapidly and the impact it had in journalism. And I know Wahyu will talk a little bit more about the data specifically for Indonesia, but in Brazil it's the same. We've already had a lot of impact on traffic for the organizations, although we see AI as an important opportunity too. So we thought it would be important to develop an event in partnership with all these organizations, where we are more propositive and think more about the agenda that connects journalism and technology, and not only think about specifically the tools we need for compensation by big tech, but in a more, in a broader perspective. So this is how we initially organized the event in São Paulo. This is why we are here today. And this is why we will be in South Africa too. And I would like to share a bit of the takeaways we have seen already in the debate in Brazil. I'm going to read them because I developed them a little bit more. So the first one, we have been talking about this since the beginning of the event today, but I think it's important because it's not a consensus all over the world, and specifically in the country where I come from, it's still a process in which we need to convince people about this. They don't see journalism as a public good in a fast discussion, and we need to, I think it's a historical perspective that we need to change, and I think it's something that we need to continue discussing. So the first takeaway is journalism is a public good and should be treated as such. Like healthcare, education, journalism needs state protection and stable funding, and it must be constitutionally recognized as an essential democratic service. In Brazil, we have several examples over the last 10 years in where journalism was a pillar to guarantee our democracy. So I think it's important that we start from this perspective and start developing our agenda. So the second one was that journalism needs technological autonomy, not just funding. So this perspective is something that we have been discussing a lot also inside AJOR, which is journalism, technology is not just a tool, it's already part of journalism and how we should think of journalism. So when we discuss this, we need to understand the technical fundamentals and develop alternative distribution and monetization models based in technology so that we can guarantee our existence. Fair compensation must be mandatory, transparent, and redistributive. So this is basically based on the experience we've had so far on the compensation models we have, because they have been done in closed doors and by individual negotiations, and we feel that this does not represent a public policy or a fomenting policy. It's mainly negotiations between two private organizations and doesn't foment the ecosystem generally or guarantee access to information by the population. So transparency is a very important topic for us. The fourth is big tech regulation must be anchored in human rights and the promotion of information integrity. Michael already talked a bit about that, so I'm going to run a bit because I feel I've talked a lot. So the fifth one is that we have been able to see by the discussion we had that Latin America has a tradition of framing communication as a right, but we have not been able to communicate this clearly to the population or to important stakeholders. So we need to develop this in a more in a better way, but also we have seen a lot of openness from the current Brazilian government to implement these discussions in a broader manner. So we have seen, there is one example that they have launched recently, which is an incubator for journalism solutions, where we will be able to have an initial experience focused in developing infrastructure for our ecosystem. The sixth is that AI needs to be regulated considering its impact on the journalistic ecosystem. This also has a lot to do with the debates we've already had and the examples that have already been shown, and that Wahyu will show. But I think that the main thing here is that we understand that AI is an opportunity not just for smaller and bigger organizations, for all sizes, but we need to discuss like mainly the economic impact on the journalistic ecosystem, as well as on the production and distribution of content and on information integrity at the heart of the regulatory debate, specifically in countries where the language is so key and where we know that there has been an extraction of data, and this has already generated profit for AI LLMs. It's really important that we have this perspective developed. The seventh is that coalitions among independent media organizations, digital rights advocates, and civil society are crucial. So in Brazil, we have only been able to guarantee that journalism is a part of the discussions, since we are still in this process of guaranteeing that the public debate knows that journalism is a public good, because we have been able to connect with other fronts of civil society that are also engaged in this debate. So digital rights groups and the culture sector have been key because they have been the first sectors that we have been able to group with our agenda to make this go forward. The eighth is that Global South youth are a powerful strategic ally. So also, as the Deputy Minister showed the data, they are on social media and they're consuming information on social media, but they are also creating digital information, and we need to connect with this audience and learn from this audience to guarantee that we are informing them and communicating with them. The ninth is that news deserts are symptoms of structural inequality. This has a lot to do with the need for public policy focus on promoting journalism. In Brazil, we have a big, like half of the cities in Brazil are almost news deserts or news deserts, so don't have an organization that is focused in covering their specific realities, and this has direct relationship with the fragility of our democracy and the need for access to rights for the population. So we feel this is an important perspective that has to be shown. Collective bargaining and codes of conduct strengthen the field. So this is like the experiences that we've already had. We have learned a lot from all of them. So we need to gather this type of learnings to develop new models that are fairer and more transparent. We must address the languages, cultures, and narratives of the Global South. This is also something we've already touched on. And Global South governments must invest in infrastructure. And this has a lot to do with what I talked about specifically on the debate in Latin America in general. We don't have examples of funding for digital and technological infrastructure that could be able to help our market to continue evolving. So I think that the experience here today will be really important for us to bring this type of knowledge to convince our governments and also to share with the other countries in Latin America. So these are the 12 points I would like to share with you. They are connected directly to the principles that we had initially discussed, but I think that this process shows how collaboration and shared learning has strengthened our initiatives in our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maia. And now I'd like to bring it to the present day and ask Wahyu Dhyatmika, Chairman of AMSI, to give his remarks.
Thank you, Irene. Selamat pagi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I think half of the participants are speakers and panelists. But for those of you who are not on the stage, we really expect your brain to also contribute to the conversation. I think that's one of the key reasons why we gather you all here. We want to pick your brain. We want to have a debate about where we should go next. What is the future should look like. I will be very brief. The focus of this session is to bring you up to speed with the latest state of play on regulation, policy, and initiative around AI and journalism. And I think the best way to do that is by updating you with what we've been discussing in Johannesburg and São Paulo. I think Michael and Maia has put it really complete and on point. But from the Indonesian point of view, what we really learned from the first conference in Johannesburg 2 years ago is the importance of collectivity, that we cannot do this alone. Each of the media houses, each of the news media organizations cannot fight this fight alone. We need to do it as a collective. Of course, there will be different commercial interests. Of course, there will be different financial situation, but it is impossible to recreate the infrastructure, the ecosystem information in the age of AI by individual companies or by individual countries. That's why this Global South conversation is important, because if we do not stick together, we will not stand a chance. We don't have the bargaining position in front of the big tech. The big tech is biased, have a Western bias. They're mostly US and European companies. We in the Global South don't have that kind of resources, but we do have the market, we do have the public, and that's why we need to stand together. We need to bring our heads together and see areas where we can work as a collective. So that's one of the most important lessons from Johannesburg. Thank you, Michael, for organizing that. I see some faces here who was also with me in Johannesburg. Sasmito, Mas Agus Sudibyo, Helena was also there. And then we continued the conversation in São Paulo. The importance about São Paulo for me and for us in Indonesia is the importance of inclusivity. That journalism cannot be discussed only by journalists. Journalism is not only about media companies. We have to be inclusive. We need to redefine journalism. We need to redefine journalists. We need to bring together all the important voices that are stakeholders of this information ecosystem. The key word is information ecosystem. Journalism is one variable, is one factor in the information ecosystem. But this is very, very important when we talk about misinformation, disinformation, hoax. This is all about creating a space where people can voice the truth. What is the truth? How do we get the truth? Who have the power to shape opinion? It should be an open space. It should be a public sphere, not dominated by one or two interests. So that's what Sao Paulo teaches us. And that spirit, now we bring it to Jakarta. And now I think it's time to bring it to the ground. We hope that this meeting, these 3 days, will enable us to talk about the strategy, about the roadmap, what actions we need to do to really fulfill this vision. This is some of the things we already did in the last few years after Johannesburg and after Sao Paulo. We reached out to so-called homeless media or emerging media, new media. We bring them to the conversation. We have a talk with Good News from Indonesia, a big association of more than 100 Info City network, very hyper-local kind of media. We had a good discussion at Hukum Online in one of our members' office. We talked to IDN Media. I think Mbak Uni is here, very welcoming, and let us learn from IDN Media initiative on creating a space for content creators and influencers. Those are some of the initiatives, but I think we also have some good inroads into the policy discussion as well. We have Mas Dahlan at the Press Council as our representative, and Mas Dahlan will also be the forefront in this debate about creating the legal framework for our information ecosystem. And I think, let me just go back a little bit on how AI has been used for Indonesian publishers in general. We are in the middle of processing a data collection for our latest survey with Monash University. Shout out to Monash University, Mbak Ika Idris and his team and her team to help us. But we will know for sure with this research how media companies in Indonesia are using AI. Mostly it's now being used for content generation, for production. So we are seeing an explosion of volume of content using AI. And I think from small local media to big media in Jakarta, most of us are using the technology for producing content. What we don't really understand is the impact of AI for our news traffic. Let me give you one example from one of our members' website that shows how the AI bots are also creating a new trend in our traffic. This is the graph from a recent media monitoring tools that shows almost 30% of traffic into one of our media websites are now bots from AI crawlers. And I think this is a trend that happened globally. It's happened in every media in the world without many publishers realizing it. That increasingly, the dominant portion of our visitors are not human. And they are also eating our resources because we have to pay the infrastructure costs to serve these queries. They're eating our resources, we have to pay more, but we don't get any in return in terms of the value of the information they crawl from our content, from the publisher's content. And even though we put a robot TXT to warn them that this is a copyrighted content or a protected content, the crawlers still all collect the data, collect the content. So we need to come up with a different strategy. Sergio from Brazil tomorrow on the second day will guide us through his latest research on how many media are using robot TXT, and the result will be really shocking for most of you. And then followed by an alternative model that will be presented by Matt from the US. I'm looking forward for that session, and hopefully all of you can also respond to the research. So lastly, I think it's time for collaboration. I think it's time, we know the problem, we have identified the issues, and I think we know generally what to do. It's time to do it. We need all of you, we need all the stakeholders. And this is not only a business issues or a legal issues or a technology issues. This is all three. So technology-wise, people who are good at tech have to come forward. Legal-wise, people who are good at regulation and policy making should come forward. And also business-wise, what do we do for the business model? How do we keep media, independent media, sustain and survive in the age of AI? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wahyu. Now, I have now had the easiest moderating role ever because we are over time, and so I will not be moderating any discussion, but because we want to stay on track and there's so much for us to share. If I can just quickly summarize a few of the themes that we've heard to take us into the following programming. It's that this needs to be a whole of a society solution. Every person in this room represents academia, civil society, journalism, the business of journalism, government, and civil society and others. We need to work together. And technologists, of course, and technologists. And you will hear from many different technologists. One thing I'm quite excited about in this conference is that we are going to hear from many different voices from the technology community. The vision is not what we are seeing right now. We can work towards something audacious and different, grounded in human rights, in the right for knowledge, and in partnership, balancing the interests of journalism, journalists, government, and civil society but in service of people. And so with that, I would like to thank our panelists. Please give them a round of applause. And I'd like to take us to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene, for leading our first discussion. And thank you to all the panelists for sharing your insights and experiences. Now, before we move to the next session, I would like to briefly mention for anyone who needs translation, the committee has provided interpreting tools there back at the corner. Please take one for anyone who needs that. And please keep it safe for you, And later on, at the end of the conference, please hand it back to the committee. Okay, now, please join me in welcoming Professor Mas Duki from PR2 Media, who will present a feasibility study on the Indonesian Journalism Fund. Pak Mas Duki, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Honorable guests, Mas Nezar Patria, Vice Minister of Communication and Digital Affairs, all the attendees, all fellow journalists, and also IG, AMSI, IFPIM representative, all the speakers. Especially from outside Indonesia, welcome to Indonesia, and I'm so happy here on behalf of PR2 Media to quick deliver you a result about the research which have been done during these years regarding the feasibility study for the Indonesian Journalism Funds, which is strongly needed in this very critical situation of Indonesian journalism. So concerning that, I only have maybe less than 5 minutes. This is too short. Usually I speak 1 hour or maybe more than. This is maybe a good example of a bad impact of digital disruption, right? Because we usually produce long-form investigative news. But now we have to produce as shortened as we can. The shorter news is the better, ya, Bang Dahlan, ya. Okay, so once again, I'm so happy to be here. On behalf of PR2 Media, we are very proud because we are trusted from IFPIM and also AMSI to conduct this very important study. And let me quick deliver to you the results. Next slide, please. Yeah, please help me, Mbak Anas. Yeah. So this is the overall background of the research we studied. I'm not going to explain you. One sentence only that we are very critical situation, right? We face right now regarding the crisis of financial support for sustaining quality of journalism. That way, we need to find out creative solution regarding these issues. So next slide, please. Well, we have two objectives of study. The first one is to identify the few points regarding the urgency and the creation model of journalism fund, which is suitable for the Indonesian journalism settings. The second question is about to identify the stakeholders' opinion regarding the regulatory models, and then the governance itself and the management of the journalism fund, which once again suitable for the Indonesian media settings. Next slide. So we did multiple methods of data collection. As you can see here, we did surveys. We did also in-depth interview, FGDs in the three strategic countries, and of course we conduct literature review or document review of many relevant models of journalism fund, which are rising now in many parts of the countries, including the Brazilian experience, also the South Africa, and we also conduct many experience of Indonesian charities, including what we have experienced with the non-journalistic societal funding model, right, coming from NU Muhammadiyah, for instance, also from the ministries as well, and many experience we have. However, there is no such kind of model which apply for Indonesian journalism. Okay. And this is the initial findings. I can, let me give you a little bit slow. The first one is that we are very happy that we give public support, yeah, from the survey that's at least 81% respondent strongly support the establishment of journalism funds. And only a limited numbers of respondents that's considered like not only supported this idea. And also from the FGDs and interview, we receive similar supports. Yeah, all the informants or the interviewer respond that Indonesia is urgent to have such kind of journalism funds. However, there are two issues here, at least about the state budget, because one side, we need state budget because this is considered a long-term model, considered huge in numbers. However, we concerned about to maintain that the journalism fund still organized as independent as it is from the industry, from the text, from the government, political interventions. This is something that influenced by psychologically and historically by the long-term experience of autocratic Suharto era, where, considered still among concern of Indonesian journalists. That's why the informant stay to keep alert about a race of government political interventions. However, once again, we need the state budget because this is more in terms of sustainable funding available for journalism funds. Yeah, that's overall what I can say from this. And then next slide. How about the governance itself of the journalism funds? In a broader way, the informant, this study, emphasized that we need the fund that can be a long-term periods, can be also non-political interventions, is very ideal, right? And also a multi-stakeholder approach, which is the fund members, the fund executive could be coming from many stakeholders represented in the agencies, and also involve not only the financial support but the non-financial support, which is also include regulatory itself, which is also include infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, etc. And of course, in terms of regulatory frameworks, the journalism fund itself need the stronger regulation, the better. Yes. We need, in ideal level, maybe one specific undang-undang or the parliamentary acts level. However, if it is need longer times, we need at least a lower model of regulation, which is produced by the president and also by the ministry as well. Yeah, we have to be quick and to be fast to establish this fund, and with this very critical and complex problem of regulatory productions. So the idea to have regulatory frameworks can be initiated by the Press Council as the initiators, right? Maybe you have a question of the model in Indonesia that can be a reference. This is the one best model, which is coming from the Ministry of Education, namely LPDP, yeah, the education funds, the cultural fund itself from the Ministry of Cultures, which are now serving all the students who are studying abroad from Indonesia. Maybe one more slide, please. Next slide. Next. Here the one and the last slide, perhaps. So at the end of this study, we are going down into the two alternative of model, which is we deliver to the decision maker. I mean, Press Council, Ministry of Commodities, also AMSI and UO, and these are the two alternative. The non-government model and then the government models. So this is, there is no, I mean, more or less it is advantage and disadvantage. So the final decision should be on the policymakers. However, this research provide the two alternatives, which at the moment, we of course recommend a mix of this. Yeah, with a strongly concern with the non-government model, which is today hopefully can be so you can see some indicators of this model itself from the initiator, from the policy level, the funding, the structure, the advantage, the disadvantage. Let me conclude my very short information regarding this research that I refer to what Flikomang mentioned. So there is the need of collaboration, right? There is the need of strong partnership between these two institutions, the Press Council, the Ministry of Commodities, and everyone here, of course, AMSI, AJI, and hopefully this three conference can be package this idea. So thank you again for the listenings of our research. And if you want to read in detail, we will publish soon this study on our website, PR2 Media, that will be informed by the committee later on today. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Mas Duki. Would you please kindly remain on stage? Thank you for the study. And I would like to invite Pak Nizar and Pak Dahlan from the Press Council to accept the feasibility study, and Irene to hand it over to Pak Mas Duki. Our esteemed guests and Professor Marzuki. Just a reminder, if you have not done the Mentimeter yet, the Mentimeter survey, please scan the QR code on the screen to let us know what your expectations are from the Control G APAC conference. We will close the survey after our PM coffee break, and now we will have short coffee break provided outside. Thank you for your patience.